Running backs took over this weekend. Saquon Barkley, Kyren Williams, Jonathan Taylor, and Derrick Henry all went off for their fantasy managers. We react to the best and worst performances in week 3 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We had some great performances this week, Vinny, from like top guys that we've been waiting for them to have them, or they just keep continuing to, get it done. Right off the bat, let's just hit on Saquon Barkley really fast because this dude is killing it. Apparently the Eagles have been a great spot for him. Has a huge week in week 3, 147 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns against the Saints. He's the running back 1 on the season with the most rushing touchdowns and the most rushing yards among running backs.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't see a couple things happening. A.J. Brown going down. We didn't see that. And then we didn't see necessarily that Jalen Hurts was going to struggle so much throwing the ball downfield or even running. I mean, he did have a pretty nice game there in week 2 where Saquon took a back seat, but Saquon was still involved. This week, he was all over the field making big plays. He did to get stuffed on that fake tush push thing that he did, and he couldn't get the 4th down. But then he reels off this long touchdown run, kind of gets the entire offense going. So that's what Saquon Barkley is. He's going to have some big games. He's going to have some games where he dances too much and gets in trouble and has an okay game. But it looks like he has a much higher kind of floor and ceiling on this team, right, than he did with the Giants. Like, he's still getting the ball quite a bit. They need him more than ever in the passing game, also because now Devonta Smith is battling a concussion on top of A.J. Brown already missing time. So it was him and Dallas Goedert taking over. Without those two guys, I mean, Dallas Goedert out of nowhere has this monster game that they needed. Right? They didn't have anyone else out there. So this shows this Eagles offense is pretty versatile, pretty explosive. They still want to be running team at heart. We'll see how this injury to Lane Johnson hurts them a little bit going forward. That could put a damper on things. And if you don't have Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, it could compress the offense a little bit where they can kind of try to stop the running game a little bit more. But right now, roll with Saquon Barkley. He's in a good landing spot. That's why I wanted to come to Philadelphia.
Yeah, easy start every week. Now, Kyren Williams, I've been saying it's going to come, right? Because he's playing all the snaps. He's getting all the routes run by running backs. He's getting all the goal line carries. Literally played all but 7 snaps again in yesterday's game. He's a workhorse, and it came through. 116 scrimmage yards, 3 scrimmage touchdowns against the 49ers. Running back 2 on the week behind only Saquon. He gets the Bears next week, who Jonathan Taylor just went off against yesterday. 110 yards for Jonathan Taylor, 2 rushing touchdowns. Could have had another, but stupid Trey Sermon stole one of his rushing touchdowns. But Kyren Williams, just the volume's too good. He's an every week start, and Jonathan Taylor finally put it together as well, even though the Colts still stunk.
Yeah, the Bears are a team that you definitely want to run against and not pass against. I mean, we've seen that all year long, that they're built to rush the passer. They have great cover corners, but they're kind of weak in the middle of the field. So that's why Jonathan Taylor took advantage of that. And really what's happening is Shane Steichen's realizing Anthony Richardson doesn't have it. I don't have a lot of receiver. Jonathan Taylor has to carry me home if I'm going to win some games. And this is why I thought he could have a big season where they needed Taylor to take a lot of pressure off Richardson. So that's developing. And now what's happening with Kyren Williams is that Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are down. Now, it's kind of a mixed bag, right? Everyone's going after Jordan Whittington and Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson, and then Tutu Atwell ends up leading the team. But in the end, what it is, it's all about the running game. That's how the Rams have to stay in games, right? I mean, they need to stick with the running game. They need to trust Williams. Their defense stinks. This is their only ticket to winning games. So, yeah, when you have some other limitations, and I think that plays in with Barkley, plays in with Taylor, plays in Williams, all of a sudden these values are up. And I think the same was starting to apply to Derrick Henry, unfortunately, because Mark Andrews put up a 0 yesterday, and Zay Flowers has not consistent, right? They're getting Rashad Bateman and some other guys involved here. So I think that's what you want for these running backs, to be the absolute centerpiece of their offense. And that's what you're seeing with Derrick Henry as well going off.
Yeah, I mean, you weren't seeing that in the first 2 weeks. They weren't like using him at all. He was only skating by from the rushing touchdowns because he scored.
Yeah.
Now he's now scored in all 3 games, 2 rushing touchdowns yesterday. So he's up to 4 through 3 games. But they finally used him, right? 25 carries, 151 yards against the Cowboys. Apparently, whoever plays the Cowboys, you want to play that running back against as well. Next week against the Bills, we haven't got to see the Bills yet in week 3. We'll see how their defense looks, but it looks really good. But yeah, Derrick Henry is just going to be a touchdown machine, which we did say prior to the season. I was worried about his workload through the first 2 weeks, but I guess they finally figured it out for him. And he looked fantastic. And I definitely had him ranked way too low for week 3. But if you want these type of weeks, you're going to have to play Henry every single week and have to deal with the games. He only sees 10 carries, right? But luckily, in any given game, he can score a rushing touchdown.
Yeah, you're going to see this high volume continue here because, again, these receivers have been inconsistent. We had Isaiah Likely go off, and then he's been kind of quiet. Andrews has totally disappeared from this offense. And Zay Flowers, again, they started throwing other wide receivers in the game in Dallas. So, can Derrick Henry, the Ravens get the Bills next week. That's how you have to beat the Bills. You got to stay on the ground, do a lot of volume there. You can't really pass on them a lot. So I would expect Henry in that matchup in prime time to go off again. He's a big game guy. They're going to get him going. So Henry, Taylor, and Williams look like really good running back picks, given that Christian McCaffrey's hurt. Bijan is struggling a little bit to get going with his offense. Breece Hall is good, but there's some competition there. So these 3 guys are totally smashing it right now. And one other guy I want to mention is David Montgomery. I think this is good for the Lions running backs that Jared Goff is struggling. I mean, Jared Goff has been good, but at heart, they're a running team. And if Sam Laporta needs to miss time with that ankle, then you're looking at, they got to trust the backs, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. They lost last week. What do? Overcorrect to give these 2 backs a ton of carries. They both come through big time. So I think that's when the Lions are at their best, not throwing around. And Goff is starting to get concerning here with some of his numbers.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But yeah, David Montgomery, it's just he's like Derrick Henry, right? Even if he's not going to get a lot of workload, he's going to get the touchdowns. Now, moving on to wide receivers, Malik Nabers he did it against the Browns, right? In Cleveland, 2 touchdowns, 8 receptions, 78 yards. He's an every week start. It's not even a question. He's a wide receiver 1 on the season through 3 weeks. He has 3 receiving touchdowns on the season. That's something we were worried about with Daniel Jones. The next 4 weeks, Dallas, Seattle, Bengals, Eagles. These should be games that Daniel Jones has to throw a lot. So Malik Nabers every week, just all-star. He's looking so good as a rookie. Now, my boy Amari Cooper came through. He had 2 touchdowns in that same game. So against the Giants, 86 yards, 7 receptions, got 12 targets. I mean, it still wasn't like on 12 targets, still not as big of a game as he could have had. Wide receiver 3 on the week. Cooper now has the 3rd most targets this season. Next 4 games for him, the Raiders, Commanders, Bears, and Bengals. The target share, you got to just keep starting Amari Cooper.
Yeah, and it might get tightened up here with Deshaun Watson struggling. There were calls for Jameis Winston in the game.
That would be amazing. That would be so good for Amari.
I think that would be good for Amari Cooper as well. So, I hate to say it, but the way it's going, like, you'd actually do more of those targets, I think, if he had some guy that was kind of focused targeting him a little bit more in not just randomly throwing it up to him. And Watson just seems all over the place at this point. So we'll see. But I do like Amari Cooper just out of pure volume. And Nabers is seeing that insane volume and target share right now. I know they're getting some other guys involved, but Nabers just looks good. I mean, he kind of is a second coming in New York as a rookie to Odell Beckham Jr. And I think he actually might be better because he's a little bit more disciplined in his routes run here. It's not just a big play guy. He's very nuanced, and he gets himself open in the red zone, which I really love about this kid. He also had a highlight catch where he went up and got the ball. So this guy's just special. He's really elevating Daniel Jones, as we thought, and maybe not the other way around with Jones bringing him down. So Nabers gets the Cowboys this week on a short week on Thursday. So they'll keep feeding him the ball. The Browns, again, you got to keep trusting Amari Cooper, and that's it. And I think what you've seen is these 2 guys have dominated target share, but another guy I'm going to transition to is Rashee Rice. I mean, this guy is also doing the same thing, and he's got Patrick Mahomes, so he's really efficient.
Yeah, Rashee Rice has been a great pick if you grab him in the middle of your drafts. Now, Bears passing defense came alive. I mean, it took Caleb Williams needed 52 passing attempts to get it done. Of course, going into the Colts game where the Colts can't stop the run, the Bears decide to throw it 52 times. We'll get into the run game in our disappointing section. But Rome Odunze, 112 receiving yards, a touchdown. Cole Kmet, 97 yards, a touchdown. DJ Moore had 10 targets, 8 receptions, 78 yards. So it's like everyone was getting theirs and they looked better. They get the Rams next week. Like, these are guys you should be playing in your lineup, and you can even consider playing Caleb Williams.
Yeah, Michelle, great call, by the way, on Tutu Atwell. We'll go back there because I want to also tout my call here on Caleb throwing for 2 touchdowns. It finally happened. Look, it was ugly otherwise, but they were actually in the game. They should have actually scored more in this one. I mean, they were kind of repressed. We'll get into the running game, but now they don't have a running game that they can trust a little bit. So what's also happened is Keenan Allen, they needed to get Cole Kmet involved in the middle of the field. I mean, this guy had actually good chemistry with Caleb Williams in the preseason, and they finally unlocked him, which I think was important because they've been trying to do this committee thing with Gerald Everett, but Cole Kmet is a very talented receiver, and they got to get him open, and they did, and he just came through. And that's what you had, a guy for every level, right? I mean, I think he was in the groove finally, maybe not stuck with Keenan Allen. It's kind of slow and it's now always hurt here. I think he found the groove. Okay, I'm going to look at Rome Odunze deep. I got DJ Moore. He's going to be open when I want him to be. Cole Kmet. So these three could end up being the main guys who are going forward. I mean, Allen seems always perpetually hurt. And like a shocker that he's only played one game here with Chicago. So I think Kmet filled in that void nicely. And everyone's saying how Shane Walter doesn't do this with a tight end. And you need put your best playmakers if your quarterback is struggling. So there's a glimmer of hope. And you said the Rams. I mean, that should be a very good get-well game for this offense. Maybe not the running backs, though.
Now the Panthers offense came alive with Andy Dalton under center. Right, this is not a good look for Bryce Young. Not a good look at all. But Andy Dalton throws 3 touchdowns, over 300 yards, 0 interceptions. Deontay Johnson goes off for 122 yards and a touchdown on 14 targets. Adam Thielen had 40 yards and a touchdown prior to getting injured. He'll be out. That's huge for Deontay Johnson moving forward. Chuba Hubbard had 114 rushing yards and 21 carries. Didn't get into the end zone. But yeah, I mean, this offense is looking viable now, which is huge, especially with Jonathan Brooks maybe coming back in a couple weeks. I think that is huge if Andy Dalton can at least make them a competent team.
Yeah, do you know Andy Dalton has this week, Michelle? Like, interesting scheduling.
The Bengals, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's at home.
Revenge
We'll
game.
say that could be some high volume, right, with Joe Burrow coming into town. So there's something to look at in that. I mean, the Bengals defense is better. I mean, I'll say this about this game. The Raiders defense was just not caring. I mean, you had Max Crosby running around like he always does, like a madman, but like their defensive backs were just like lollygagging to the ball. They were not coming in. Antonio Pierce was very pissed after the game, and I would be too if you look at this tape. Guys are running free. This is not like the best offense in the league. It should not be the first quarterback who throws for 303 this year. It's Andy Dalton. It should not happen if you're this Raiders defense. So it was one of the worst performances. So that definitely helped. I mean, the Panthers were motivated and excited to be there. And that could be a thing as well, right? That they were excited to go out there with Deontay Johnson and Adam Thielen and all their weapons to just say, this is fun. We can actually get going here. So I think that was a bit of an indication to unlock a lot of this offense. So that's good. I think Johnson's going to be playable as a wide receiver 3 going forward. Chuba Hubbard is going to get the volume as a lead back until Brooks gets back. So even had Miles Sanders score. That should not happen. I mean, that's where the Raiders should have hung their heads low. Like, we let Miles Sanders score in a game like this. So this is embarrassing by the Raiders. It's not always going to be that way. Just keep that in mind. The Bengals are going to be a little bit tougher and bring it against their own quarterback this week.
And then the only tight end, I guess Cole Kmet did great. Jake Ferguson had a good game. Yeah. Tyler Conklin earlier. But Dallas Goedert gets 170 receiving yards and 10 receptions. Devonta Smith goes out in that game with a concussion. AJ Brown's not there, but they get the Buccaneers next week with them still. I mean, I will see if Smith can come back or Brown, but with all these terrible tight ends, Dallas Goedert seems to be a guy that at least he has a high ceiling. You play him moving forward. We're going to get into the most disappointing plays of the week and what we're doing with them. Can we even play them moving forward? We're going to hit on that right after a quick break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by DoorDash. And look, it's game day, and we're working like nuts. Michelle and I are just watching games, locked in, doing our day jobs, getting ready for this show. We got to be locked into our chairs, and you might be having the opportunity to enjoy the games a little bit more. And we enjoy them too, but we also need to count on someone that's going to come through. And delivery powered by DoorDash is going to get us what we need to power us through the day. And you guys might be getting some adult beverages. We're mainly getting caffeine and getting kind of ready for the entire day, giving us stacks to give us the energy we need. And DoorDash is there for us, and we can rely upon them on game day. So I hope you're doing that as well, because why need to leave the house? If it's college Saturday or an NFL Sunday, you just want to be there and know that DoorDash has got you covered for your local favorites and bringing it home too. You just have to use the promo code LOCKFall24 if you go to DoorDash and that app. You'll get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. That's right. Check it out. Limited time offer. Terms apply. Promos not valid for orders containing alcohol. Keep that in mind. DoorDash is your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. You must be 21 over to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select U.S. markets. All right, Michelle, it is time to dash into some of the guys that were terrible this week. And we talked about it. If you listen to our show, we said that CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson were not worth their draft values. And I think it's come to fruition here. Sophomore slumps, if you want to call it that. But, Michelle, what's wrong with these guys? I mean, Richardson just looks lost out there. Stroud just not putting up the numbers.
For Stroud, I think it was just a really hard matchup against the Vikings. The Vikings through 3 weeks seem to be absolutely, I mean, they're not allowing anything at all. So I'm willing to give him a pass for that. At least the wide receivers for the Texans had, I mean, Diggs had 10 receptions, 94 yards. Collins, 86 yards on 10 targets and only 4 receptions. So not great efficiency, but still a solid game. And then Dale, if you're in PPR leagues, 5 for 62, you're fine with that. In a game where CJ Stroud only had 250 passing yards. So unfortunately, his one touchdown went to Cam Akers, so it didn't really help out the pass catchers. But I think they're going to be okay. Jacksonville's coming up, much easier defense.
Much easier.
Anthony Richardson, though, he just looks terrible, and he's not getting the rushing yards. That's the issue. You could be terrible as a passer, but you need the rushing yards. That's not happening. Michael Pittman Jr. is not playable, and they get the Steelers this next week. I mean, you can't play Richardson or Pittman. The only guy you can have in this Colts lineup in your roster or in your starting lineup next week is Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, he's their entire offense right now. And these receivers, maybe we overvalued them, and we were looking at Josh Downs. He came back, and Alec Pierce and A.D. Mitchell and Michael Pittman. They're just not exciting when you start to think about it. And then the tight ends, like, we're getting nothing out of this committee that has like 15 people in it. So when you look at Anthony Richardson, he's just not playing well. Maybe everyone was jumping on that sample size from last year a little too much. And remember, on this show, we said Kyler Murray's a better value. We said Jade Daniels is a better value. You could have got them much later than going hype crazy on Anthony Richardson behind Lamar Jackson. He's not Lamar Jackson yet, folks. He's not Jalen Hurts. So you might as well have gone for the value there of Murray or Daniels, who might end up outscoring him. I mean, they should at this rate, the way it's going here with Richardson. So, it's tough. I would hold on him. I would maybe bench him, though.
Bench him. You got to bench him.
Yeah, I think you hold on him, see if someone will bite. I wouldn't be too afraid that you're losing major upside, right? Like maybe try to entice someone in and get something of note here. But I wouldn't say, okay, you're going to buy low on him. I think you want to sell low if you can and maybe trick someone into buying high on him is what I would do with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, he has 5 interceptions over the last 2 weeks and no touchdowns. So, like, you're not playing him against the Steelers, who have been the best defense in the league so far this year. Now, Derek Carr, this is what he does, right? He makes you want to believe in him. He has these huge games. And then as soon as everyone puts him in the starting lineup, because they're like, he did it twice and he gets a good matchup against the Eagles, he comes falling flat on his face. This is just what Derek Carr has done his entire career. 142 yards, a touchdown, interception. Chris Olave came, fine game, 6 receptions, 86 yards, got the 1 touchdown from Carr. So you're happy with that. And then Rashid Shaheed, 5 targets, 0 receptions. So he came flying back down too. They get the Falcons next week, then Kansas City. It's not easiest of matchups, but I'm not trusting Derek Carr. I don't care. I don't care that he's going to have some big games. I don't want to ever lose with Derek Carr in my lineup. Like, that's it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not doing it.
Yeah, he didn't really have a big game in week 2. Let's keep that in mind. It was a running masterpiece by Alvin Kamara. So he had one good game against the Panthers defense, right? And then we went nuts on this. And it's just calm down. And like Derek Carr is like our, I guess, enemy of the podcast. We just have never liked Derek Carr. We were hopeful, right? And Rashid Shaheed, we got reeled in by Derek Carr going nuts with him, but that was terrible. Like, he should have got him going against the Eagles. They were giving up those type of plays. That is one of the biggest disappointments, that he put up a goose egg this week. So Derek Carr, yeah, the Falcons defense is looking pretty good. I mean, they were in check there for Patrick Mahomes, and they've got some things that can cause problems in the middle of the field. That's a problem for Derek Carr, right? They have 2 safeties. He doesn't throw to dudes unless they're wide open. That's the problem. And Shaheed, he couldn't connect with him because he wasn't flying downfield wide open like he was in the first 2 games. So, yeah, Derek Carr, we're done. This is it. I mean, Sam Darnold might be buying into, but Derek Carr, no.
And remember, Sam Darnold did the same exact thing
he did
the first 3 weeks with the Panthers when he got there, and then he absolutely fell apart the rest of the year. So I'm waiting on Sam Darnold too, but Justin Jefferson is so incredibly amazing that it might keep Sam Darnold up for this year. And Kevin O'Connell is just a great head coach as well. Now, the entire Dolphins offense, incredibly bad with Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle back there. Tyreek Hill, 3 receptions, 40 yards. Jalen Waddle, 4 receptions, 26 yards. Devin Achane, 11 carries for 30 yards. He led the team in both of those areas, and got 3 receptions, 28 yards. Unusable. I will say, though, Skylar Thompson got injured. They did sign Tyler Huntley to the practice squad prior to this week. He should be their starting quarterback, and Huntley was a very viable backup quarterback for the Ravens. I would trust these playmakers a lot more if Huntley's back there, so just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Boyle, I mean, I can't believe they even trotted him out there. I mean, he was terrible trying to fill in for the Jets last year. I mean, that's what they had because they were new with Huntley on the team, but Skylar Thompson gets hurt. So I think what they would do with Huntley is, hey, follow the Malik Willis game plan, playing the Titans this week. Just run Huntley and open things up, and that'll get the things downfield there for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Devin Achane should have a big game as well. So I think they'll be a little bit more run-centric. They couldn't get the job done in this particular game, but yeah, I mean, Tyreek Hill, you got to lower your expectations, and Waddle for sure. So it's tough. But maybe Huntley, like you said, he was a super sub for the Ravens for Lamar. Maybe he would improve the situation greatly. You just need somebody who's slightly below Tua, and I think he's the guy where I think Thompson and Boyle are just way down there away from Tua.
Yeah, I'm hoping Huntley plays to save some of their value. Now, Brandon Ayuk. So we'll talk about Jauan Jennings. We're not just forgetting him. We're going to have him in our final segment where we're talking about early waiver wire pickups here. Jennings goes off, but Ayuk only has 5 receptions, 48 yards on 10 targets. He could have had a huge day. He was running deep down the field, wide open. Purdy didn't throw the ball for whatever reason to him late in that game. Purdy had a great game, though, besides that one play. I don't know what to do with Ayuk. He gets the Patriots this week. You should be able to play him. Sooner or later, it has to click. And I guess you just keep going with him.
Yeah, that was definitely disappointing. You thought one of these balls and one of these many balls and big plays that were going to Jauan Jennings, but it was like Purdy was like locked into this matchup the whole game. And then he even, like you mentioned, there was an Ayuk easy play, which he would have let rip last year. He would have just
it would have been a 60 or a 50-yard touchdown.
He would have like long handed off to him to say, here's a touchdown. But maybe he was just into Jennings. I don't know. Maybe he got annoyed by Ayuk.
Ayuk had a couple bad drops. He wasn't where
maybe
he was
that's what
supposed
it
to be.
is. So I don't know. Maybe they just wanted to keep moving the ball, and Jennings was a little bit more reliable in that sense in this game. So I don't know. Yeah, the Patriots, again, their secondary is not as scary. We just saw what happened with the Jets. So you can play Ayuk, but he just has to get a little bit of a spark, a big play, and I think he'll get going. But yeah, I mean, he talked a lot about his contract and how good he was and all that. This is the time to show it with all the other guys out. And so it was really a disappointing performance.
Now for the running backs, DeAndre Swift is unplayable against the Colts, who have the worst rush defense. The first 2 weeks are incredibly bad. He gets 13 carries for 20 rushing yards. He is unplayable. Zamir White, I mean, I know the Raiders got their butts kicked, so it wasn't the game script we thought, but 10 carries, 34 yards. Alexander Madison comes in and steals a rushing
Of
touchdown
course he does.
again. So I guess he's the goal line back. So I don't really want to start Zamir White anymore either. And then Rachaad White gets only 6 carries, 17 yards. Terrible efficiency again. 5 receptions, 18 yards. Bucky Irving gets 70 rushing yards. And then also 3 receptions. White still well outsnapped Irving, but I think that's going to change. Irving's a better running back than White.
What you're seeing here is all these changes have not been good for these running backs. So you have new offensive coordinators in each situation, right? Liam Cohen, there was Rachaad White. You've got Shane Waldron, basically Luke Getsy, who was with the Bears, is now on the Raiders. So these guys are just not maybe the best coordinators when it gets to using the running backs. I mean, look at what's happened now in Seattle without Waldron, right? They finally figured out how to use whether Kenneth Walker or Zach Charbonnet. So some of these people do not know how to use running backs well, or to help us in fantasy at least, right? I mean,
they don't care about our fantasy
team. No, they
team.
don't care. But yeah, Swift, I'm just a little bit concerned. I think Roschon Johnson, I hate to say, might be the best option there going forward. Bucky Irving, we'll see. They're still giving Rachaad White the bulk of the receptions, but that's really hard, right? To play someone who's doing this and Irving is doing this, but he's not getting all of it. So when he's split it into like this piecemeal backfield, then it really hurts your fantasy assets. And I think these 3 situations are really hurting from that because their coordinators are just getting a little too cute with usage.
Yeah, Bucky Irving, someone also, if he's on waivers, pick up, because I do think sooner or later he's going to take over this backfield. And then lastly here, I'm afraid Travis Kelce's done, right? He wasn't getting targeted for the majority of the first, like in the first half. He gets in Mahomes' ear and they come out in the second half and, he's starting to get targets, 4 receptions for 30 yards. And you're like, okay, it's starting to come. And then he just is not used at all the rest of the game. It's like he got in his ear, he started, and then they just went away from him again. Like, if even when he gets in his ear and says, I want more targets, and he ends with 5 targets, 4 receptions, 30 yards, I don't know when you're going to be able to trust him. I know how good he is. But man, I fear he was a bad pick this year.
Yeah. And a couple things have happened, and I'm looking at this at sportingnews.com, like really taking a deep dive, but I did see some double teams. So they're still double teaming Kelce, even though he's slower. He's a 36-year-old almost, or whatever, 35-year-old almost here. And next month he will turn 35. So he's a little slower. We get that. He's got wear and tear. But I think if you look a little bit deeper, what's happening is, where does Patrick Mahomes go? Like, he's looking for the explosive plays. The guy that's zooming after the catch. The guy is shooting downfield, getting open. That used to be Travis Kelce. Now that's Rashee Rice. And Patrick Mahomes' eyes light up for Rashee Rice now like it's his new toy. He didn't have that, right? He hasn't had that other player since Tyreek Hill. So keep that in mind. That's what Kelce has really been able to dominate post-Hill, where these other guys have not been go-to guy worthy for Mahomes. So that's a big factor here. And why is Rashee Rice running wide open? Because people are still covering Kelce like he's Kelce. So at some point, they're going to have to cover Rashee Rice. That's going to help Kelce in some of these games. These matchups also haven't been great, right? The Falcons have 2 top safeties. We talked about it. Thought he could get going with a touchdown, but this is a tough matchup for him. And I don't think the Bengals were all that great, but he's getting a lot of division games. He owns the Chargers, the Raiders, Broncos. Those are 3 of the next 5 opponents here. They also get a nice matchup against the Saints, who Dallas Goedert went off on. So I think things are going to change. You're just not going to get tight end 1, 2 overall. Like, you can get tight end 7, 8, 9 in the end with Travis Kelce. That's probably what you're looking at now. You got to settle for that, but I don't think you bench him quite yet, because where are you going to go? All the tight ends stink. A bunch of them are hurt. You really can't go anywhere.
I know. The tight end position's disgusting. Hopefully tonight, maybe Dalton Kincaid can break out tonight. That would be huge.
We need that.
Yeah. We are going to talk about the most surprising performances of the week, including Jauan Jennings, who absolutely destroyed the Rams defense, like Brandon Ayuk should have, and just kind of give you, an early little waiver wire look to end today's show. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel is super user-friendly, and even in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can place your first $5 bet, and you'll get $100 in bonus bets guaranteed. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's pretty insane that you place a $5 bet and you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That means you have $200 to play with throughout the 2024 NFL season. And you can make any game interesting then, right? Even putting a bet on the Patriots game can make the Patriots game interesting. That is saying something here. Again, all you have to do is sign up at FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 of bonus bets guaranteed. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Jauan Jennings, let's talk about it. I'm sure he was picked up on a lot of waiver wires maybe before the game, right? But he still wasn't rostered in more than half of the league. So there's a chance he's out there. And he had 175 yards, 3 receiving touchdowns. And the thing is, he looked so incredibly good doing it. Jennings is actually the wide receiver 2 now on the year after this performance, but he gets the Patriots next week. And they're not a good defense either. And if Deebo misses again, Kittle misses again, Jauan Jennings needs to be in your lineup.
Yeah, he's not a fluky guy. They really like this receiver. I mean, keep in mind, he was very important to their Super Bowl chances and almost beat the Chiefs in overtime because of his presence. So keep that. They just like him. I mean, they could have just discarded him with all these other things that they have in the weapons, but they stuck with him. He's a good route runner. And that's what I mentioned with Samuel and McCaffrey out. They need someone to pick up that short to intermediate passing game because Jordan Mason, they don't throw to him, right? So they need someone to pick up that part of their passing game because Brandon Ayuk was the deep ball thrower or deep ball catcher, I should say. So when you look at this, Jennings is more that technician that you can trust all over the field. He's a slot guy. If you need him, he can line up all over. So I think Brock Purdy appreciated that. That's kind of why he rewarded him, I think, in that game quite a bit. So yeah, if these guys are out, maybe we'll get some news on Kittle and Samuel. Maybe there's some kind of IR situation coming up with them. I think you just need one of these guys to be out. He's not going to do this every week, but if one of these guys remains out, I think he's valuable.
Yeah, he is. I mean, Purdy loves him, and he looked good. He looked good. Yeah. So he is playable moving forward. Tutu Atwell, if you listened to our shows during the week, you would have already picked him up. But when Cooper Kupp is out, Matthew Stafford goes to Atwell. He led the team with 93 receiving yards. Could have even been a bigger day. He dropped a decently, long ball earlier in the game. He also had a great pass to Demarcus Robinson, who was just out of bounds. Like, it could have been an even bigger day for him. He gets the Bears next week. Tougher defense, but like I said, I went through the numbers with Diggs, Nico, and Dow. Like, they were still able to get it done, even though they. That was against the Vikings. The Bears. Who played the Bears?
Well, it was the Colts.
The Colts.
There's no takeaways there, unfortunately. So I mean, but you did. I mean, you can link it because that did happen the week before. So you're thinking about week 2, but it's fair. I mean, Atwell, however, the thing about Sean McVay, he's going to scheme guys open, so that's good. And Atwell will do it. And look, he's just the most exciting guy they have when these guys are not on the field.
Yeah, when Cooper Kupp specifically, like, he turns into the Cooper Kupp of this team. He's not as good as Cooper Kupp, but he's going to get used, and Stafford's looking for him. So he is a viable play. Calvin Austin, he has a big game, 4 receptions, 95 yards, a touchdown. 55 of the yards came on the touchdown. He gets Indy next week. I don't know. Van Jefferson got hurt in the game. Roman Wilson still didn't play yet. Hopefully he plays next week. He's been injured. He wasn't on the injury report, Roman Wilson, so that was weird that he didn't play. But I don't want to trust Calvin Austin.
No, you can't trust him also because it's a very lower volume passing game. I think Justin Fields saw something open up with Austin. That's why he had the long touchdown. But that's great for Justin Fields. I think he needs the weapons. I mean, he's got Pickens. He's getting involved with George Pickens. He's getting comfortable with Pat Freiermuth in the passing game. So this is good. I think this boost of anything, what you would say is if Austin's becoming a factor, and I think you look at Justin Fields having more viability going forward. This is a very good fantasy game for him as he produced the touchdowns as well as good enough rushing yards.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Fields is looking good. I know the stats aren't crazy, but this is the best he's ever looked.
Yeah, he's in an offense we thought he could do well. And like when we said, hey, trade him to Atlanta, go with Arthur Smith, we thought this could happen. It's kind of a perfect scenario at this point. And
they can ball's like accurate is the crazy thing. Like every time he passes, the ball is on point.
Yeah.
He still
They're
has
gonna
some issues with
Colts.
taking
Yeah.
sacks and not passing fast enough, but his accuracy has been lights out this year. Now, one quarterback that had a fantastic fantasy week was Malik Willis, 25 fantasy points for the Packers. He puts up 73 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, 202 passing yards, a passing touchdown. But the thing is, even if Jordan Love misses again next week, they play the Vikings. No, you don't play. If CJ Stroud can't do it against the Vikings, if Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan can't do it against the Vikings, I'm sorry, you can't play Malik Willis.
Yeah, what I'm gonna love about that game, I'm gonna be nerdy about it, but Matt LaFleur has just been on fire.
Oh, Matt LaFleur is so good.
Yeah, he's on fire. I mean, and Brian Flores is on fire too. So that would be like strength versus strength. What's going to come out on top? Now, Malik Willis, like you got to credit to the Packers, just like changing their offense with Willis. They were so excited to give him the game ball in Tennessee. They were so excited to do it
so
after
fun
the
for
game.
him.
It was a fun finish, but yeah, I mean, but this tells you maybe the Titans don't know what they're doing a little bit with whoever's coaching them. But like when you look at Malik Willis, yeah, he may get one more relief start, like you said, against the Vikings. It would be very hard to pull off, but he's been good. So I think what's good is that this offense has a lot of weapons, and they're going to keep the ball moving somehow. So I love it, and I think Willis, you may sneak in one more start, but not for fantasy.
Yep. That is it for today's episode. On tomorrow's episode, we'll dig in way more into the waivers, right? Who you should be picking up. So we'll get into all that tomorrow. I hope you guys enjoy your 2 games on Monday night, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.